Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting back into Heroes Reborn with number 7. And this time we got so many references to both Marvel and DC past events to where at this point I've really just lost count. But for one of these that just happens to be the death of Superman, the death of Hyperion, like it really gets crazy for a minute, especially when we get into the aftermath. But with that said, let's just get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get your spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so as soon as we jump back into Heroes Reborn with number 7, we're given a flashback to the Civil War of this universe that we had seen Zarda make references to back in Heroes Reborn issue 6. Because even though this battle on the surface was about the Hero Registration Act, the true root of this conflict had to do with Nighthawk and his feelings for Zarda, which at the time Nighthawk, he had really just expressed it like he didn't want to comply with the alien, and that alien being Hyperion, who wasn't from this world, which quickly turned this whole thing into a Batman versus Superman like story, especially with Hyperion saying you're gonna die bitter and broken just like your parents. And Superman wouldn't have said that, like he wouldn't have hit that low, but I think you kind of get the picture. Because for Nighthawk, like the same way that we saw Batman armor up to go against Superman and more or less use all the advantages that he could, in this case Nighthawk, he gets back the symbiote as well as using the Eye of Agamotto to even the playing field as much as he can against Hyperion. But like with seeing them battle and crash through buildings like a Zack Snyder film, as well as a Daily Bugle billboard, which kind of makes it seem like in this world J. Jonah Jameson has it out for Nighthawk since there is no Spider-Man here. But with seeing this and having Jason Aaron like go so far to even have the line of Hyperion saying that in a civil war both sides bleed, like too much fun was being had making this comic, like. But one of the last things we see into this flashback is Hyperion taking Nighthawk into space in order to fly his symbiote into the sun, which as we know didn't destroy the symbiote because the Red Skull has it now, but from what it seems that was at least enough to end the conflict. But after that, when we jump forward to today, there's still a bit of that tension there like Zarda had mentioned, but at this point when we get back into the meeting which she's called for the Squadron Supreme of America to ask them what they know about these beings called the Avengers after her recent encounter with Thor, and it's here where we start to get everyone's take on as far as what they know about the Avengers, which at first isn't much because Dr. Spectrum, he's flown to every corner of the cosmos and he's never heard of them, and neither has the Blur, but then in the blink of an eye, like just to be sure, he then runs over to prison and punches on Frank Castle a few times to try to get a few answers, like just to be sure, but he comes back with nothing. And with hearing this, like I'm sure that Frank even knows that that just wasn't right. But then it's here where we hear from Hyperion, who opens up and he expresses about his feelings of things not being right. And after talking to his psychiatrist, Doc Samson, Hyperion has decided to open up to the others and tell them more about his most recent encounter with the Hulk, which at the time had sent Hyperion searching into the Arctic in order to find Captain America, but of course at the time he turned up with nothing. But with hearing this, it also shows us that prior to Zarda calling this meeting, like Hyperion, he was likely going to keep all this to himself. And in Heroes Reborn number 2, Hyperion did mention that he considered talking to Nighthawk, but instead of going to Nighthawk, Hyperion had just went up to the sun, to where at the time he then came up with his own reasoning that if things are different, then he doesn't want them to change. But at this point, after him speaking to Doc Samson and having this meeting with Zarda and the others, we now see a part of Hyperion who's acknowledging that something isn't right and something's wrong with this world, and it's like right in front of their face. And even with Hyperion saying this, I wouldn't say that he necessarily wants things to change or he wants to give up his OP status. Like I truly believe that he still wants to keep all that. But in this moment, it's more so like he wants to know the truth as well. But also when he brings this up, the Blur mentions the strange things that he had seen in the Dread Dimension, where it appears that this reality was like stitched together, and Dr. Spectrum, he shoots it down like everything's weird in the Dread Dimension, like that don't count. But also with Dr. Spectrum saying this, like we know that he has his concerns, or at least had his concerns at one point when he expressed them to President Phil Coulson. But then it's here where everyone on the Squadron Supreme notices that Nighthawk is just being extra quiet, and because of this, Hyperion asks him like, hey man, like just tell me something, tell me I'm not crazy. And in response, Nighthawk then asked Hyperion in his best Batman voice, where exactly in the Arctic was this? which from there leads us to seeing the whole squadron splitting up and investigating the different anomalies, if you will, that they discovered in a number of different locations, which first takes us over to Dr. Spectrum and the Blur, who go up to the Arctic to investigate the location where Captain America was. And they do discover that a body was there, but also Dr. Spectrum, he notices that there is an alien signature, but he just presumes that that alien signatures that he's picking up, that it had just come from Hyperion when he was there. But then after this, when we jump over to Hyperion, we come to find out that he has found Rocket's ship. And with seeing this, once again, I can't help it, I'm getting Man of Steel vibes again, and possibly because it starts with him tearing his way out of the ship, but who knows. But with finding the ship, he tells the rest of the squadron, like, I found the ship that belonged to that raccoon who almost murdered Dr. Spectrum. And Dr. Spectrum chimes in like, hey, it was a heavily armed raccoon. Like, let's make that clear. But with Hyperion finding the ship here, like, we know it's outside of Earth because Brandy Selby, the Star Brand baby, she had asked Groot to bring her to Earth, to where not long after Okoye found them and they followed her ship back to Earth to where they went to Wakanda. But when Hyperion finds the ship, he destroys it, with finding no one inside and nothing to really point to any evidence that this is connected to the Avengers. But then from here, next we go over to Nighthawk and Zarda, the Power Princess, to where initially you kind of have this back and forth, with Nighthawk telling Zarda, like, you know Hyperion doesn't like the two of us alone, right? And Zarda tells Nighthawk that she's told him a bunch of times that it wouldn't work between the two of them because she would crush him like a sack of twigs. And at that point, Nighthawk's like, hey, well, let's get it cracking. No, I'm just playing, he ain't say that. But while they're here, Nighthawk is showing Zarda the security footage which we saw him retrieve from Ravencroft Asylum in Heroes Reborn number 5. But while looking over this footage, the first thing that stands out is Captain America's shield. But then Nighthawk points out to Zarda that along with them, there's also Echo, and she's the Phoenix, which immediately reminds Zarda of her encounter with Jean Grey when she was the Phoenix, which we got a glimpse of in Heroes Reborn number 6. But then it's here where Zarda mentions that she tore Jean to pieces and flew each piece to a different corner of the cosmos, which is so messed up. But then on top of this, we get a bit more information because in the aftermath of the Heroes Reborn Phoenix saga, I guess, but it was after Jean was killed to where Wolverine, or just Weapon X here, along with Final Flight, who's like this world's version of Alpha Flight, they came after the Squadron Supreme, and Wolverine, or Weapon X, who had his claws enhanced with shaman magic, killed Hyperion, which in this world very much felt like the death of Superman. And with Zarda thinking back on this, it's not only because she had saw the Phoenix again, but it's also because Nighthawk mentions that they both know what dies doesn't always stay dead. Because later, much like Superman, Hyperion had came back, which is a story we see within the Heroes Reborn one-shot, Weapon X, and Final Flight, because when Hyperion came back, not only did he beat the brakes off of Weapon X, to where then after he fried him with his solar vision, which by the way, still didn't kill Weapon X. But with Hyperion doing this for the revenge of his own death, the Squadron Supreme, like, they did Logan dirty. Because after Hyperion fried him, he then told Dr. Spectrum to just take him, and from there, Dr. Spectrum took Logan to the Black Galaxy on a long dead planet, and he just left him there, where there was no oxygen, no water, no kind of sustenance, to where Logan would forever be in this endless loop where his healing factor just wouldn't allow him to die. And ever since that happened, all the way up to this moment, like, that's where Logan has been. And it's nuts, because the whole time we've been talking about Heroes Reborn and the Squadron Supreme of America and how much dirt they've done within this universe, and to me it just feels like from what we've seen, they've done the X-Men and the mutants like the worst out of everybody. But then it's here where we jump over to Nighthawk and Dr. Spectrum, to where Nighthawk lets Dr. Spectrum know that the alien signatures that he had found in the Arctic, that they weren't Hyperions, but instead the signature matches some meteorites which were found by an old arms dealer by the name of Howard Stark, to where when Nighthawk discovered this, he put it together with his suspicions from Heroes Reborn number 5, and with all this information he comes to the conclusion that the stories of Wakanda are actually real. But he doesn't go into all of that with Dr. Spectrum, but instead he just tells Dr. Spectrum to scan every corner of Africa because he believes that their next answer is hidden there. And so after this, we then go over to Ravencroft Asylum, where we find Zarda and the Blur, who are paying Norman Osborn a visit, who, like we'd seen before, he's like this universe's version of the Joker. But with Zarda and the Blur coming here, they come to ask Norman who helped Echo escape, but with him being very cryptic and not giving them direct answers, it's here where Norman mentions that he more or less talked the Silver Witch into killing herself, with her cells shorting out during the recent riot, to where after that he was just whispering to her in the dark, and as a result the Silver Witch just hex blasted herself. But Norman then tells Zarda that he was only whispering or talking to Wanda, much like he's talking to Zarda now. And with doing this, he very much taunts Zarda, asking her if talking to her now makes her want to kill herself, and he lets her know that is the only way she could be reunited with the other Utopians, who we had seen in Magneto and the Mutant Force. The other Utopians were killed because Zarda brought back a virus from the world back to Utopia Isle, which practically makes it her fault that they're gone. And when he says this, Zarda jumps through the glass of Norman's cell, and all I can hear is the music in the back, like dee 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 dee, as she literally chokes the life out of him. And this time I think he's dead, like for real, because after doing this, Zarda, she's then like, she doesn't understand how Nighthawk could keep all these villains alive for so long, and how he puts up with his precious rogues gallery. And when she says this, we get a flashback to a moment when Norman Osborn had ran for president, to where with doing so, we got this world's version of the Dark Avengers, which in this case were called the Dark Squadron, to where amongst them we got the Sentry, Nova, Moon Knight, Valkyrie, and the Ghost Runner. And they're looking pretty sick, especially Nova. And even with seeing this, like in a way, I kind of want to get like a Dark Reign or a Heroes Reborn version of Dark Reign, but then also with just knowing how OP the Squadron Supreme are, like I'm also skeptical of how good that would pan out to be. But with getting back to present day, Nighthawk, he brings the information to the rest of the squadron, and it stirs up an argument between the big three, which are Nighthawk, Hyperion, and Power Princess. Because Nighthawk wants the Squadron Supreme of America to move forward on Wakanda without letting President Coulson know. But for Dr. Spectrum and the Blur, who are kind of watching from a distance, because arguments between the big three, they can get kind of messy, or better yet destructive, but because of this they just watch from a distance. But while they're listening to the big three go back and forth, President Coulson is also listening in to them, and because of that he knows what they're about to do. But then while we're here in Washington DC, we then get this moment where the Blur and Dr. Spectrum, they visit the Fury Monument, like while they're waiting for the big three to sort things out, but they head here like initially on the conversation of simpler times. But then while they're here, Dr. Spectrum, he suggests that the Blur just goes back in time so that they can just have a drink with previous President Fury and perhaps even win the Vietnam War. But then it's here where the Blur tells Dr. Spectrum that him going back in time and changing things, that it doesn't always work well for him. And when the Blur says this, we get like this flashback to the Blur's version of, I guess, Flashpoint mixed with Spider-Man One More Day, which I guess kind of works perfectly, like if the Blur had to give up Mary Jane in a similar way to Barry Allen, like accepting the loss of his mother. But regardless of how this played out, what we do know for sure is that Mephisto is just having a blast over here. But then after seeing this, we then jump over back to present day in the African safari, in a location to where Dr. Prism has figured that whatever Nighthawk is looking for, that it would generally be in this area. And even though Hyperion can't necessarily see anything different with his atomic vision, the Blur notices that he can't run through a certain area, and Zarda can also feel that there's great power like in this area. And essentially Nighthawk has noticed that the readings from the Phoenix, the energy signature from the Star Brand, the atmospheric disturbances from Zarda's encounter with Thor, and the trail from the Daywalker, like they all lead here. And with Nighthawk finding this place, Zarda suggests that they strike before the Wakandans or whoever is aware of their presence. But as soon as she says that, the Wakandan shield opens up and out come the Avengers, who at this point are ready to fight and take their reality back. But before we get into the beginning of this face-off, it's here we go back to President Phil Coulson, who, like we've seen before, he's aware of what the Squadron Supreme of America are doing. But while he's playing back the conversation to where the squadron is like, we're moving ahead, without telling the president to give him plausible deniability, but when he plays it back here, it's also heard by Vice President Thunderbolt Ross and the House Press Secretary J. Jonah Jameson. And when they hear this, like on one hand you have Vice President Ross, who responds like he wants to start his own version of the Thunderbolts to back up the squadron, and on the other hand you have Press Secretary Jameson, who wants to put out the news that the Squadron Supreme of America are like a bunch of menaces, but President Phil Coulson's not having that, so he just shoots the both of them. And just like that, Thunderbolt Ross and J. Jonah Jameson are done. But then immediately after, President Coulson covers it up by saying the two of them were assassinated by sleeper agents from Wakanda. Which is also crazy because when that lie gets out, the bigger focus is going to be on like, what? Wakanda's real? But then also when this happens, Mephisto shows up and he assures President Coulson that he had did the right thing, because the more people that say the A word, or the more people who know about the Avengers, that then begins to compromise this world that they've created. But then it's also here where Phil Coulson mentions that they may have missed a thing or two, but Mephisto then tells him like it's nothing that can't be rubbed out or forgotten again, which pretty much means kill Captain America. And when Mephisto asks asked President Coulson, like, how does he feel about doing that? Or how's the idea of killing Captain America make him feel? And President Coulson's like, I never should have left him alive in the ice, as he shoots either Jameson or Thunderbolt Ross as he hears them moaning and still alive. But at this point, with finding a way to resolve this, President Coulson can't necessarily just call back the Squadron because their interest has been piqued already. And on top of that, if the Squadron changes sides or they're defeated by the Avengers, then this entire reality will be compromised. But then it's here where President Coulson mentions to Mephisto that he had told him that they would have help with keeping all this together. And Mephisto responds by telling President Coulson that the council won't commit because they still don't trust him. And that's why he's not getting the assistance that he anticipated, which is an interesting mention. But with hearing this President Coulson, he suggests that they make things right in order to win over the council, which is something that can't be done by bombing Wakanda because it'll bring too much attention. And once again, he can't call back the Squadron because that could backfire. And it's here where President Coulson says that the only way to handle this is to do it the same way that he remade this world in Mephisto's image, which is by using the Pandemonium Cube. And with seeing this, I can't help but think, and I may be way off with this one, but this cube very much reminds me of the Tesseract that was made by Reed Richards in the 1610 before he became the maker. But then also hearing Mephisto talking about the council, which then has me thinking of the Council of Reeds, and it just has ideas swirling through my mind left and right, especially with Mephisto stealing a symbiote at the end of King in Black within the Ghost Rider tie-in. So who knows where all this is going? But wherever it's going, there's a lot of strong potential leads in a number of different directions. So for now, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, all your theories about who the council may be, because it could twist over to like the Dracula and Khonshu stuff that Mephisto was pulling strings with before, but I don't think it's gonna double back in that way because we kind of been there, done that. And I think it's more likely that Jason Aaron will hit us with like a crazy turn with the whole council thing, on top of the upcoming battle between the Avengers and the Squadron Supreme of America. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or over on Discord, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.